We have Carly Povey, the Chief Commercial Officer of Bonza, the Australian LCC, and Rob McKinney, CEO of Northern Pacific Airways, based in Alaska, right?
How you doing? Nice to meet you. Standing room only.
Standing room only. Thank you, panel. Carly, I promised that I would start with you because you're new here. Welcome so much to the panel. We referenced you a little bit earlier. I cannot buy an airplane ticket on your website. What kind of an airline is this? How does this work?
It's fair to say we're the newborn in the room, so thank you for having us. Look, I think it comes back to everybody you've heard from in the last few days has talked about digital innovation, talked about retrospectively transforming when it comes to digital channels. Whilst it's not for the faint-hearted building an airline, the luxury we had, I think, was to stop and say, actually, how might we reimagine digital and what that means for us from day one? And where might we benefit from the challenges of COVID, scalable communication with customers, meaningful and situational marketing? How might we think about that differently? And really, we decided, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? And so we launched with an app-first strategy. We went on sale 4 weeks ago. And really, that was about saying not just what do we believe to be important here and now in terms of technology and using that to communicate, but what do we want to be as a business? And ultimately, that's a retail brand of choice. And so finding a way to weave ourselves into everyday lives felt like something we couldn't walk past with a blank canvas, to be frank.
And as we were saying before, Uber doesn't have a website, right?
They don't, and nobody really talks about that. And so we tried very early on to say, look at us as the Uber of airlines. And clearly there's lots that sits underneath that. But really it's about saying, whether it's communicating when things are at their worst and you need to be at the best, or whether it's thinking about e-commerce opportunity, we kept coming back to the app. But there was one other reason the app felt really right for us. It allows us to be fully paperless in the cabin. It allows sustainability benefits from day one. And those things might seem small, but as we all know, those things make a difference and they build over time. So really, it was our opportunity to say, let's find a circuit breaker for some of the industry challenges that I've lived in previous lives and many around us were living at the time.
I know it's really hard to know, when you're losing revenue, but is there any way you can gauge, how many people might have tried to go to your website, not downloaded the app, because it tells you to download the app on the website, and then you lost the customer? Is there any way to know?
It's a great question, and I think there's multiple data points that we look at. So let me get to the punchline with the caveat we're 4 weeks in. 99% of all our customers are booking via the app as we currently sit. The remainder are using travel agency portals in small regional towns, but we're seeing early signs that customers are responding really, really well to that strategy. But there's a number of different reference points, listening tools on social, digital support center conversations where customers need support with the app. Everything we're seeing suggests that the core of Aussie travelers are ready for this change and are happy with the change, but we'll be far from complacent about it. I think you've got to walk into these things with a plan B, a plan C, and a view that facts will drive where you go to next.
Thank you. And Rob, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
I suppose I know your airline better than most, but why don't you explain to the audience what you're hoping to do with the 757s?
Sure, with Northern Pacific Airways, our concept is to pretty much replicate the successes of both Copa Airlines and Icelandair, especially Icelandair, what they've done over the Atlantic. So Anchorage, Alaska, for those of you who don't know, is perfectly situated halfway between Asia and the continental United States. And that's where our core airline, Raven Alaska, resides and where all our infrastructure is anyway. And we realized that there was an entire empty terminal sitting there with 8 empty gates just begging to be used, and where else does that happen in the world? And so we looked at all the opportunities, how to grow the airline. We really believed the numbers bore out that with the same level of risk of trying to replicate a Dash 8 operation someplace else in the world, we could offer this service similar to what's already been proven out over the Atlantic and do it over the Pacific with 757s, not because that's the perfect airplane, but because they were readily available and we could go get them for fairly inexpensively. We've had several challenges in the past 3 years, restarting a bankrupt airline in the middle of a pandemic. So speed and playing the hand that we're dealt has been one of our strengths. And so that's what we think is like the timing is what's serving us, and that we can get into the market while there's still a vacuum that was caused because of the COVID pandemic.
Do you have any guesses about when I might be able to leave my home in Los Angeles, fly up to Anchorage, and connect on to Tokyo?
Well, I know when you can leave your house in Los Angeles and fly somewhere. How about that? As of probably tomorrow, we'll be live in all the GDSs and OTAs operating out of our base in Ontario, California, into Las Vegas, starting June 1. The longer haul piece, the original business model, has proved to be more challenging, mostly as a result of the closure of the Russian airspace that required an extra certification ETOPS that we didn't originally count on needing. And so we're probably targeting now more Q1 of 2024 to have the full operation up and running.
Mandy, I wanted to go back to this idea of a mobile app. What do you think of this idea of having an airline that just doesn't have a website? Do you think it works?
I think it all goes back to whether it's relevant to your target markets. And I think there's a good reason for Bonza to make this very cautious decision to focus on app. For HK Express, as we say, we are based in Hong Kong, and we are serving Hong Kong as well as Greater Bay Area, the entire mainland China as our home market. Other than our own apps, actually, we have to consider other digital channels that's relevant to our customers, such as, for example, we launched our WeChat mini app, so have a mini app sitting inside WeChat that will be more relevant to our target audiences in Greater Bay Area and the mainland. So I guess every airlines will need to understand very well their customer behavior and make a very conscious business decision in terms of the channels and also the investment on different channels.
For all your airlines, call centers have to go away at some point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Con, people call your airline on the phone or no?
We have a very small call center. It's probably about a dozen staff, so it's really quite small for an airline that carries 9 million passengers this year. But the reason it still exists, there is some demand for it. And even with the call center, we've invested a lot in technology to self-help, trying to direct them away to either app or website solutions. But still a lot of people, well, enough people that still warrants it existing in a small form, still want to speak to somebody. And occasionally there are complex queries that do come through, which, you know, frankly, you can't create a digital solution for absolutely every permutation and combination that exists. So people do want to still speak to somebody, but it's a small part of the customer queries.
Rob, when you get up and running, is there going to be a call center?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're in a situation where we are serving a very diverse swath of the population. So Raven Alaska and Northern Pacific Airways is essentially the same airline with two brands. So we serve villages with native Alaskans that will walk up to the counter and buy a ticket with cash. So we're not in the position where we're going to be able to anytime soon until if we ever walk away from that business or it changes, that we can completely abandon those folks that don't have that level of technology.
All right, I want to switch topics a little bit and talk about sustainability. I don't know if anybody in the audience follows Carsten Spohr at Lufthansa Group, but you know, generally speaking, he's not a big fan of ultra low cost and low cost carriers because he believes that they are incredibly cheap and they basically persuade people to fly when they otherwise wouldn't. And you know, we're all looking at carbon emissions, we're looking at sustainability. So when you run these LCCs and they have really cheap prices, they convince people to fly when they otherwise might not. Like, what are your plans for sustainability? How do you message this to customers? Carly, do you want to start?
Happy to. So look, there's some foundational things. Aircraft choice. The aircraft that we have are 20% more fuel efficient. That's a really important structural foundational piece from a sustainability perspective. But our model is actually predominantly aimed at those who are driving in the car for 6-7 hours plus, if not days, to travel within their own country. And Australia is a country where travel is essential for many. I think the key thing is how do we think differently about the role we play from a leadership perspective in sustainability? And ideally, it's something that we don't compete on as an industry. It's one of the few things we don't compete on. What we've tried to do, especially being brand new into this, is to challenge ourselves to say, how do we make meaningful change, but not in a tokenistic way? Because quite frankly, I think that's worse than doing nothing at all. So we've split it down into 2 tranches. The second of the 2 is the broader 2050 strategy, as anyone else sat here would have. To be frank, 4 weeks into being on sale, if I was to sit here and tell you we had a fully built out 2050 strategy, you'd probably be quite right to look at me with a bit of doubt. But we have made some big changes from day one, aside of the aircraft and aside of the app strategy, and wherever we can, pushing for a paperless journey throughout the customer cycle. We've also done a few things that are quite different. The first one is all of our food and drink is sourced in country. It's 100% sourced in country from local producers. We've tried wherever we can to reduce that footprint. And we're the first airline to launch reusable cups. Now, that might seem small, but again, those things make a big difference. All of these things that are wastage every day on aircraft, we've tried to work through how do we stitch some of those things into the DNA from day one. And sustainability, I think probably for all of us, certainly for me and for customers, it's quite a confronting topic. How do you find the right place to start? So we tried to think about some significant things that over time would have big impact, but that were tangible for customers to understand from day one.
Thank you. Con, do your customers care about sustainability?
Absolutely. We have a responsibility to all of us, to our people, our customers, our society. I mean, you know, there's in this aspect, there's a high CSR responsibility we carry as airlines. If I can give a little bit of a cynical view back to whoever made the comment on the low-cost airlines, arguably the carbon emissions of a less densely populated aircraft per capita flying, per person flying, are much higher than on a low-cost airline. So if you want that as a counter-argument, throw that back at whoever mentioned that. So I don't see this as a low-cost versus a legacy airline issue being the debate. The debate is the airline industry as a whole has a responsibility here. And equally, whether you're low-cost, whether you're not low-cost, we share an equal responsibility and obligation to humanity and to life to play our part. I think, you know, the industry's got a way to go. And I echo what Carly said around, if you ask if we've got a full blueprint of absolutely everything that we can do perfectly, hell no. There's not many industries that have, by the way. But having said that, that's not an excuse. That's obviously a focus for, I think, I can't think of an exception of anyone that would say to you, this is not a focus for us. Everyone has. We have to invest in this. That's reality as well. And we're prepared to invest in this. And we're still on a learning path and on a path to go in terms of implementing, you know, what would be a full suite of things that we can do. Yeah, there's some things there today. It's not to say that there's nothing done, but we're still on a journey.
Rob, the 757 is not known for sipping fuel. I mean, is this a concern as you go to market with an airplane that's 30 years old?
Sure, it's one of the many concerns as you start a new airline. So there's several aspects to that. We have several fleet types from small to large. In our small aircraft fleet, we're big proponents in actively racing towards electric aviation and hydrogen-fueled aviation for our small and mid-size aircraft. As far as the 757 goes, you know, while it in and of itself is a platform to get us going, you know, I'd like to point out the business model of using Anchorage again is an advantage where Anchorage is the third largest freight airport in the entire world. And the reason is all these 777s and 747s that could make it nonstop across the Pacific don't, because it's more fuel efficient for them and cost effective for them to stop in Anchorage, refuel, and move on. So we're able to capture that same efficiency, even though it's with a single aisle airplane and an older airplane. So there is that aspect to it. But in general, I disagree with the premise that adding low cost is a net negative to the world. We believe that aviation access to more people that can afford it is actually an economic engine that is part of the rising tide lifts all boats, and that the more people that have access to aviation, the more wealthy that adds to those populations, and in general, then they're able to focus more on green technology going forward.
Thank you. What about you, Mandy? Is it important to your customers?
Yes, definitely. I totally agree with what they mentioned about it's not just a low cost or full service carrier thing. It's an industry thing, and it's actually a top topic for all the mankind. And also, looking at what the airlines are doing, other than using fuel-efficient fleets like us, we have an order of 16 brand new 321neo, which is very fuel efficient. We're also working on all the digital tools to help to improve the operational efficiency. I guess many airlines also focusing very much on the operational efficiency side in order to achieve sustainability. For example, with like an app for our pilots to monitor the fuel usage, they can actually help to reduce the kind of fuel usage in a long term, and also applying some digitalization of our maintenance record. Other than making reactive maintenance decision, we now be able to do more predictive decision on overall maintenance work that can actually help the reliability and also of our aircraft, and also reduce lots of the other unnecessary races. And also for LCC itself as a model, we offer passengers the choice to just pay what they need. If they need a baggage, if they need a meal, we offer them that service. And that also means we reduce lots of wastage or unutilized resources in serving our passengers. I think overall, everyone in this industry is playing a role, and also for our customers, they are also playing a role by being more receptive and also being more participating in trying the new technologies, the new tools, using our apps, doing online check-in, not using paper. I think everyone playing the role.
Thank you. All right, panel, I have to ask you about one of my favorite topics in the world, and that is food. So I cover US Airlines, and there's a new ultra low-cost carrier called Avelo Airlines. And the CEO of Avelo has decided that he is not going to serve any food or drink on board the airplane except for free water. Because no matter how much he charges for the food or drink, he believes that it is impossible to know what people are going to want on board, and it's always going to cost the airline money. And when you're a ULCC, you don't want to spend money that you don't have to. Has anybody gotten this question of food right? I know EasyJet once told me they were using data scientists to know who was going to buy what when. Anybody have the secret answer?
I think this is where an app becomes pretty helpful. So if we go back to the start of trying to get customers on the app journey from the point they book, all of our food and drink is ordered on board via the app. Now, what that actually allows us to do is to learn very quickly and change very quickly what's available from a stock perspective. So decisions can be made, if you like, in day around wastage and making sure, to your point, we're clear what customers want, but we're also clear what they don't want. I think it's a really tough one to crack retrospectively, but we've seen real benefit in that ability to learn very quickly and use the data in moment. To your point, I think there's fantastic things you can do from a data science perspective. From my perspective, it's about being able to act quickly and in day to make decisions around what you stock.
Con?
Food is something that's very dear to me, as you can see as well. But seriously, two answers I'd have to the question. Firstly, from the cost angle, a lot of low-cost airlines are doing a no-cost approach to food. And what does that mean? Is they find very progressive-minded caterers who are prepared to do this sort of stuff on a revenue share basis, and therefore there's zero cost to the airline. So that's one way to address the cost question, but more importantly to the food itself and whether there's a demand for it in the first place. I think it really depends a lot on your network as well. And if you've got a short shuttle where the average flight you do is 45 minutes or an hour, there may not be much value in putting food on board. But you know, if we're flying somebody from Riyadh to Istanbul and it's 3.5 hours on a plane, people can get hungry and there is a demand. And we do serve food on board, and we do because there's been a demand for it. There has been since we started flying. And you're right in terms of the data science. We use point of sale devices. We get detailed data back on what sells, what doesn't sell. When it comes to hot food, again, just to sort of maximise both the relationship with the caterer as well. It's a pre-order basis rather than we load a lot of stuff that's perishable. So basically, whatever's loaded on board that's not already sold before the flight takes off is non-perishable. So that's another way of managing things. So I think there's still a place for it. And I think it's still an ancillary revenue opportunity, and it could be more substantial for, there's some low costs who have an average sector length of 4 hours around the world. And I think if you've got that model, it probably represents a larger number of ancillaries, and maybe on a shorter haul airline it's a little bit less, but there's something in it. And if the customer wants it, and there's $1 in it for the airline, why not?
You guys know any airline for which food is actually a moneymaker?
I think it is for
It is.
LCC with food as an ancillary revenue source. And for us, what we try to do is, first of all, we offer more relevant choices for our passengers based on the passenger behaviors and also the travel patterns, because our network, we serve around 5-hour stationing, so rather short sectors, short to medium short. So in terms of choices, we focus a lot more on snacks or some or drinks that is less perishable, and we can actually manage the stock and the cost quite well. For hot meals, we encourage more pre-orders by adopting more dynamic pricing before the flights. So we encourage passengers to make their decision earlier in order to enjoy so-called discount for the food they want to purchase in flight. With that, we see there's a win-win for us. We can get more accurate meal planning, and in order to reduce any unnecessary waste and also better control our costs. For the passengers, of course, they can enjoy the same food with a better price.
Thank you. All right, so food is of interest to me, and the other thing that is of interest to me is the Japanese long-haul, low-cost carrier called Zip Air, which is owned by JAL. I don't know if they're going to make it, but I do tip my cap to them because they do interesting and novel things. And one of the things they do, you may know, is in the booking path, they have tried to sell me clothing, right? So it's not just ancillary items related to the flight. They're just going to sell me anything that they possibly can. Do any of your airlines play around with this sort of thing? I mean, do you think there's a future for that sort of stuff, or do you just sell the seats, the food, that sort of thing?
We do offer relevant add-on services or products for our customers from time to time. Like what I've mentioned in our keynote earlier about when passenger with more health concern, earlier we partner with those telemedicine platforms to offer kind of teleconsultation and medicine service in 6 different countries so that they can travel free, and in case they need that kind of service, they can get access to the service and get what they need in terms of medicine being delivered to their hotels. So that's the kind of service we offer when we understand that passengers got these needs. So from time to time, we look for different opportunities, different ancillary products that cater for different needs. For passengers flying to Japan, we also offer different one-way passes for them to purchase in advance so that they can better plan their journey. So all these kind of products, I think, depends whether it's relevant to your target segments. Maybe for Zip Air, they think they've got very nice apparel that their passengers may like. So I think from time to time, there's lots of different trial and error, and we have to test and understand more what our customer needs. Yeah.
We're seeing some interesting trends, and I think for those that know us as a brand, we take what we do seriously, but not ourselves so much. And one of the things that we first did, which is actually the first award we've ever won, was when we unveiled Bonza. We had a photo shoot on a beach in the Sunshine Coast, and we had people in Bonza bathers and also in budgie smugglers. Now, I'm not going to explain what they are. You can Google them if you don't know what they are. It's a male type of swimwear. But we were inundated with people asking, where can I buy them? So we actually sell them on board. And on average, we're selling about 5 pairs on board everywhere we fly. Now, there's something in that. We've also launched socks. When we announced our non-binary uniforms, we had people saying, where do I buy the sneakers? Where do I buy the socks? I think it's only something that becomes significant over time if people love the brand and it continues to follow through on its commitment. But there's definitely an opportunity there forming, I think, for whether it's collaboration with local designers or whether it's, the more fun items that people really want to buy, if only for novelty factor. So it's a watch point for us.
Can I ask, does anyone wear the budgie smugglers on board your aircraft?
Not yet, but if they do, please take a photograph.
Would you please send us one? I think maybe the point, because I'm not sure about selling general apparel. I mean, I can recall seeing in-flight magazines selling wine fridges and, TV sets and the like. I'm not sure how successful that stuff is, but certainly some branded clothing we find sells well with us. So, branded caps, branded polo tops and T-shirts, that sort of thing does sell. Quite popular, actually, and the branded sales is a strong proportion of the in-flight sales for us.
What about selling the travel journey more generally? I was speaking a couple weeks ago with David Neilman, U.S. entrepreneur and all over the world, and he reminded me that Booking Holdings, which is the parent of Priceline, has a market cap bigger than every other U.S. airline combined. And he said all Priceline does is sell like hotels, rental cars, and some airlines, but not as well as airlines. And Tony Fernandez was up here yesterday talking about his super app. You ever dream about selling things beyond airlines?
Absolutely.
That's definitely one of our main plans is like, and part of our goal to replicate what Icelandair has done so well is we're going to encourage the whole stopover traffic. So then we will be able to promote hotels, activities, go dog sledding on a glacier, go helicopter riding, go heli-skiing, go see the rest of the beautiful state of Alaska. So absolutely. And then our plans is also tied into with our loyalty program that we feel is somewhat unique and cryptocurrency based, that all of our partners will then accept our cryptocurrency as a form of payment to go do those activities.
Anybody else want to talk about plans to create a super app or anything related to that?
I mean, you're heading into the data space now, right? Which is the core of what we're talking about here. I mean, if your customer segment has an interest in a more broader, and let's stick to travel for the moment, the lower hanging fruit, a comprehensive travel solution, not just the air ticket. So, if someone's traveling and we know, and we've got profile on them, and we might know where they travel to, the sort of hotels they stay in, perhaps where they're spending some money or eating, and you can start bundling and personalizing offers to them, that offers tremendous potential. And if you want to call that a super app, I guess it is, because what's super app other than an app where you've bundled a lot more into it, right? So there is definitely potential for that, and there's not anybody I'm aware of that's not doing that way. We're heavily in, well, I won't say heavily, but we are invested in some AI technology, which is telling us a lot more about what our customers are doing and other things they're looking at apart from, our webpage and building profiles. And we're not very sophisticated at this yet. So far we're using it only to produce more targeted marketing promotions in the right places, but that can easily be expanded then to adding to the offer to the customer and personalizing it further. So there's a lot of scope there, definitely.
If the last few years taught us anything as an industry, I think it's diversification is key and the ability to think beyond just the flight portion. Back in a previous life, I was part of a UK airline, Jet2, who 20 years on are a really successful low-cost airline, but also a really successful holiday package company. And whether you look at Allegiant, whether you look at Jet2 or the various reference points, certainly from where we're sitting, that diversification and being able to offer the customer the entire experience, not just the flight portion of it, is key. It's particularly key for us because 93% of everywhere we fly, nobody can fly direct right now. So opening up leisure destinations and then holding their hand, technology is key. I'll give you a very brief plug. We have colleagues in the room from Go7, which is part of our Investors 777, their technology travel arm. And I think really technology is what will allow that agility and quickly. I think trying to do it in a simple way that, to be frank, makes it much easier for the customer and allows them to feel confident that you're a trusted business and you're selling more than just the flight is important. But I think we'll start to see more and more diversification in the industry as a direct result of the few years that have gone before.
Can I buy a vacation package on this app?
Not yet, but watch this space. Very, very soon.
What about you, Mandy? Can I buy a vacation package?
We do have some good hotel offers. I think, let's put it this way, no matter we are offering any super app or not, it's just a name to offer a platform with all the relevant products and services for customers. I think owning a super app is one way of execution. There are other options to do that, including partnerships, collaborations with people who are good at certain areas in order to offer the best values product. Like what we just talked about hotels, about those holiday packages. We can actually do a lot of different collaborations with different operators or different providers to offer the same products on our platform to our customers. So I think most airlines are looking into this way to try to maximize, the kind of products and services you can offer, and in order to gain a bigger share of the wallet from your customers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Carly, I have to put you on the spot here. Your CEO said that I should expect to pay about 50 Australian dollars per hour of flight time, which is a very simple way to understand how much I should pay as a customer. But there's obviously so many things, part of the costs that aren't that you don't control. So how do you work with this mandate?
It's a great question, and there's a nuance in that which is starting from, so believe me, that's definitely part of the sentence. But look, put simply, the way that we've priced our ancillaries is all sector length related. So the longer the flight, the more the cost, which typically is an easy one to explain from a customer perspective. We don't shy away from the fact that it's a choice model and it's an ad model. I think for all of us, that's something we have to be really transparent around, and to be frank, that's what allows us to offer the starting fares that we have. But it comes back to that diversification again. The more that you can get the basics right, the more you earn the right to be seen as much, much more than just an airline. And that is key to surviving and thriving, to be frank.
I have to ask a question for the whole panel, and of course I am a journalist and I'm a curious person by nature, and maybe Carly can start this, but what is the highest margin item that you sell?
Water.
Yeah.
Is it really water?
I'm thinking the same, beverages in general. Yeah.
Water. Yep, same.
Really? Many, many years ago, a U.S. airline, U.S. Airways, tried to be the first major carrier in the United States to charge for water, and they couldn't get away with it. They could charge for everything else, but not water. So, do you guys sell a lot of water?
Yeah, we do charge bottled water, or even if you just want a cup of warm water, we also charge.
No. So I was under the impression that it was more like travel insurance. Is it not?
Look, I think there's definitely, and this is where the holidays piece comes into play. Here and now, I think simplistically the answer you've seen across the board is water, but I think where the real margins are is that entire experience, and attractions is a really good example of that. Finding a way to sell the entire experience. They are typically quite high margin products, but they're also value add, and that's the balance, right? Sometimes you can drive the revenue number, but you're not actually driving the experience. So finding a way to do both is key, and I think that's where that broader package business really starts to become appealing.
Right. This is it's a fascinating discussion. I'm just curious. Have you guys, learned anything new about your customers recently that maybe you were surprised? I mean, I asked this question, I think, of you before, Mandy. Like, how has customer behavior changed during the pandemic? People cannot be doing exactly the same thing. They can't want the same thing that they wanted in 2019, right? Or is it just back to normal, Con?
Who doesn't like to travel? I mean, the basic human desire to travel was there before. It's back. It's fantastic. We thought probably. I mean, we're talking to a bunch of low-cost people, so we don't have a high business demographic in our customer base. So maybe someone who has a high business demographic might say a lot of the business market may not have come back. Blah blah blah. you know, in the space that we're in, people are back and they're flying, and they've missed it. We're curious. I think if you look at the, you know, the current youth and generation we have, they're very travel and lifestyle oriented, probably more so than what we were. We were, you know, a bit more focused on work and less, you know, life-work balance and the like. And I think, you know, and COVID's probably pushed it a little bit more even in that direction for humanity. So it's back and it's strong and it'll get stronger. I don't see that going away. So it's a breath of fresh air. It's what allowed us to grow 50% last year.
I fully agree with you. I've been waiting 3 years to get back to Singapore, and I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much to the panel. This was a great discussion. Just want to let you know that it is time to break for lunch, and we will be back here in this room at 1:50. I'm going to be having a chat with an executive from Etihad Airways. Thank you very much.
Thank you.